What happens when a CEO walks into his own restaurant undercover, and no one even looks him in the eye? Kellan Brooks stood outside the red bricked building that used to be his pride. 9 restaurants. That's how far he'd grown it in the last 7 years since buying the failing chain from a retiring couple in Indiana. This one store 4 in Aurora, Illinois had been one of the strongest performers until 6 months ago. Then complaints started trickling in. Cold food, long wait times, angry customers. But every time he asked his district manager, he got the same answer. Just a few bad nights, nothing serious. Kellan didn't believe that anymore. He hadn't met most of the staff at this location. The turnover had been high lately. He also wasn't exactly recognizable. He'd never been the face of the brand. That made this easy. With a little help from a makeup artist and a new ID badge, Kyle was born an unemployed warehouse worker looking to start fresh in food service. His cover was simple. He was a new kitchen trainee sent by a third-party staffing agency the company sometimes used to fill short-term gaps. The store had been short-staffed for weeks, something the district manager blamed on lazy new hires quitting after 2 shifts. Inside, the air smelled of fryer oil and something burnt. The manager on duty, a woman in her late 30s with sharp features and a permanent Bluetooth earpiece, didn't even bother looking up from the tablet in her hand. "You must be the new guy, Kyle, right?" "Yeah," Kellan said, slipping into the role. "Happy to be here. You'll be shadowing Marcus." "Try not to slow him down," she said, already walking away. Marcus, the lead cook, was in his early 20s, tall and broad-shouldered with tired eyes that didn't match his age. "You ever worked a grill before?" "Little bit," Kellan lied. "Great," Marcus muttered. "Because nobody's gonna teach you anything here." For the next hour, Kellan stayed quiet, observing. He noticed the shortcuts immediately. Buns pulled straight from the freezer and slapped onto the grill, no thaw. Chicken patties reheated 3 times. Fries held under the lamp for 40 minutes. Orders were tossed together without checking tickets. Marcus moved fast but with zero care. "When do you check the temps?" Kellan asked at one point. Marcus shot him a look. "You want to make it through the week or not?" "Don't ask that stuff here." Kellan nodded slowly, a pit forming in his stomach, but it wasn't just the food. At the counter, a young woman named Maya handled customers. Her voice was calm, her smile real, even when a man yelled at her for getting his order wrong. She apologized, fixed it, and didn't even raise her voice. Kellan watched her take a deep breath before turning to the next customer. Later, he found her restocking sauces in the back. "You all right?" he asked. She looked over, surprised. "You're new, Kyle, right?" "Yeah," she shrugged. "You get used to it. We're always short and the manager doesn't really jump in unless it's a VIP order. VIP, like if someone important calls ahead, then everything suddenly gets cleaned and food's made fresh." Kellan's jaw tensed. That night after the store closed, Kellan stuck around while everyone else bolted. Maya stayed too, wiping down the sticky dining area. "Why do you bother?" he asked. She hesitated. "Because I might be the only one who does." The next day was worse. A family came in: mom, dad, and a little boy named Liam. The boy was excited about the kid's meal toy. But when the order came out, the burger was cold and there was no toy. The father politely asked if it could be fixed. Marcus, who was now inexplicably covering the register, rolled his eyes. "It's a kid's meal, not a steakhouse." Kellan froze. The dad looked stunned. Maya stepped in instantly. "I'm so sorry, I'll fix it right now." She remade the burger herself, fresh, and found the last toy in the box. After the family left, the manager stormed out from the back. "Maya, we don't remake food unless it's a real problem. You waste product like that again, it's coming out of your check." Maya stood still, silent. Humiliated, Kellan's fingers curled into fists. He looked at the floor, keeping his cover. That night, he made a decision. No more watching. Tomorrow, he was coming back. Not as Kyle, as Kellan Brooks. The next morning, the glass door swung open at exactly 8:15. The same woman who had barely looked up yesterday now stood frozen mid-sentence with a biscuit in her hand. Kellan Brooks stepped inside not in a disguise this time, but in a slate gray collared shirt, dark jeans, and a padded folder under one arm. His face was calm, unreadable. The few employees setting up for the morning rush were too busy restocking napkins and prepping syrup dispensers to notice anything unusual. Maya was the first to look up fully. She blinked, recognition dawning. Her eyes darted between Kellan and the manager, then down again. The manager straightened. "Can I help you?" "You can. My name's Kellan Brooks. I own this place." His tone wasn't loud, but it carried enough weight to snap every head in the room toward him. The biscuit fell from the manager's hand. He continued, not waiting for introductions. "I spent the past 2 days working here. As Kyle. I cleaned the grill, ran the fryer, watched what passed for customer service, and saw how you treat your team. Now I'm here to talk." Marcus had just walked in from the back. The moment he saw Kellan, his expression dropped into a defensive scowl. He didn't say a word but made no attempt to hide the shift in posture, arms crossed, head tilted back, jaw tight. Kellan turned to the manager. "What's your name?" She cleared her throat. Shelley Raymond." "Shelley, we're going to talk in the office. Everyone else, keep getting ready for opening. Maya, can you join us?" Maya hesitated, eyes flicking toward Shelley. "You're not in trouble," Kellan said gently. "Please?" Inside the cramped back office, Shelley stood near the desk while Maya leaned against the filing cabinet, arms folded tight across her chest. Kellan closed the door behind them. "I'm going to be very direct," he said. "This store is broken. That's not about numbers or sales, it's about leadership. And Shelley, that falls on you." Shelley opened her mouth, but he cut her off with a raised hand. "I watched you ignore customers, disregard fresh food protocol, and reprimand one of your only functioning employees for doing the right thing. You threatened to dock her pay for fixing an order. Is that something you've done before?" Shelley blinked. "That's not what happened. You misunderstood. I didn't ask how I interpreted it. I asked if you've done it before." She hesitated, then looked away. "I've said it. But I haven't actually taken money out of a check." "Why say it at all?" Silence. "I also saw you ignore health safety standards, reheating product repeatedly, serving expired items, refusing to check temps. That's not just poor management, it's dangerous." Shelley's voice sharpened slightly. "We're short-staffed. I do what I can. You think it's easy running this place with 3 people on a Friday night?" "No, I don't think it's easy," Kellan said. "But you're not managing stress, you're passing it down. You're creating an environment where people cut corners because they know no one cares." He turned to Maya. "Have you ever brought this up to anyone above Shelley?" Maya nodded slowly. "I sent in 2 reports through the internal hotline. I never heard anything back." Kellan's face didn't change, but he made a note on the folder, then he looked at Shelley again. "You're done here. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. You'll be paid through the end of this week, but you won't be coming back." "What?" Shelley's voice cracked. "You can't be serious. I've been with this company for 4 years. I'm very serious. You can take your things now or after hours." "Your choice." Shelley stared at him, stunned, then stormed out of the office without another word. Maya looked like she couldn't breathe. "You all right?" Kellan asked. She nodded, but her voice was tight. "I didn't think anything would actually happen. Most people in your position wouldn't." He sat down, flipping open the folder. "I've already pulled clock-in reports, order times, and supply orders for this location. The numbers don't lie, but what matters more is what I saw. You're holding this place together piece by piece." "Why?" She shrugged. "I guess I kept hoping someone would notice." "I did," Kellan said, "and I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the store was just opening. Kellan stepped into the dining area as morning light filtered through the windows. Marcus stood behind the counter, arms still folded. Kellan walked straight to him. "You've got 2 choices," he said. "You can stay and we'll retrain, rework, and rebuild this store from the ground up. But that means full compliance, full accountability, or you can walk. Right now, you think I'm the problem?" Marcus's tone was defensive. "I think you're part of it." "You have no idea what it's like here," Marcus snapped. You show up for 2 days and think you've got it figured out. Kellan's tone didn't shift. You're right, I only saw a snapshot. But in that snapshot, I saw you ignore basic food safety. I saw you roll your eyes at customers. I saw you create a culture where nobody says anything because they know it won't matter. Marcus looked away. I'm giving you a chance, Kellan continued. Not because of what I saw, but because I believe people can turn around if they're given the tools. If you're willing to start over with training, with oversight, you stay. If not, I'll write your release paperwork myself. Marcus stood silently, jaw working. Then finally, he gave a single nod. All right, then we start today. The rest of the morning, Kellan stayed in the kitchen, not directing, but working. He cleaned the fryer himself. He walked Maya through a new daily prep list typed on his own laptop. He asked one of the younger cashiers, a quiet teen named Lewis, what would make his job easier. Lewis simply said, knowing someone's paying attention. By noon, the lunch rush began. Customers came in just like before, but something was different. Maya moved faster, but not frantically. Lewis asked a customer how their day was before even taking the order. Marcus didn't say much, but he double-checked every sandwich before handing it out. Kellan didn't miss it. Around 2, Kellan pulled Maya aside. I'm sending in a temporary support team from the headquarters. They'll be here tomorrow. We'll rotate in a trainer for you and you'll be on the list for assistant manager assessment. Her eyes widened. I didn't ask for that. You didn't have to. She studied him a moment. Why now? Why not months ago? Because I made the mistake of trusting reports instead of people, Kellan said. I won't make that mistake again. He looked out at the line shrinking at the register. This place isn't fixed, not yet. But it's worth fixing. And for the first time in months, Maya smiled, not politely, not because someone expected her to, but because she believed him. By Monday morning, a temporary 3-person support team arrived from the main office. Kellan had them cycle through prep, register, and line duty to reduce the burden on the regular staff. They weren't there to take over just to stabilize the ship long enough for real change to begin. One of them, an operations trainer named Denise, started documenting every process breakdown she witnessed. She didn't speak much, but her eyes missed nothing. Maya worked the opening shift again. This time, she wasn't isolated. She had a clear line of communication with Denise, and even Marcus had settled into a more cooperative rhythm. The tension hadn't disappeared, but it had moved into the background. Kellan stayed close but didn't hover. He spent the early hours making phone calls from the back office, coordinating with HR, requesting a full audit of the employee hotline, and scheduling a surprise inspection of the other locations in the district. He wasn't just fixing one store anymore. He was examining the entire layer of leadership he had let operate unchecked. Just after the lunch rush, a young man in a delivery uniform dropped off the week's produce. Kellan stepped outside to sign the order and noticed a woman sitting on the curb beside the dumpster, rubbing her temples. She wore the store's uniform shirt, though he hadn't seen her inside. You on break? He asked. She looked up, startled. I guess I just needed air. You work here. Technically, I'm on the schedule. Name's Bry. Kellan crouched beside her. You haven't been inside today. No. I came in at 11. Shelley told me I was cut, said the shift was full. Kellan looked at her, confused. There's no way we were overstaffed today, he said. We weren't, she said. She just didn't want me on the floor. She always did that. Said I slowed things down with my hearing aids. Kellan's chest tightened. She said I didn't respond fast enough. I can hear fine, I just process things differently, and I ask people to speak clearly. That's it. Did you ever file anything about that? I stopped trying, she said, her voice flat. I needed the job more than I needed the fight. Kellan stood slowly. Come inside, you're working the rest of your shift, you're getting paid for the hours you've missed. And we're going to talk to HR about what happened. In writing. Bry looked stunned. She followed him inside in silence, retying her apron. At the front counter, Lewis glanced up and waved. Hey, Bry, thought you were off today. Not anymore, Kellan said, answering for her. He turned to Denise. She's on register rotation now. Make sure she's paired with someone who can give her order support if needed. We're adjusting the system so she doesn't get left behind." Denise nodded and motioned Bry over without hesitation. As the day wore on, Kellan noticed something else. Employees started speaking up more, quietly at first, then with more confidence. Lewis mentioned that the fryer timers often malfunctioned and hadn't been replaced in over a year. The prep cook, Janelle, admitted she'd been handling deliveries solo because Shelley refused to let anyone else clock in during off-peak hours. Even Marcus, now more present, asked if they could start logging waste again, not just to track losses, but to actually figure out why it was happening. Kellan wrote everything down. No promises, no platitudes, just observations and follow-up actions. At 4:30, a woman in a navy pantsuit walked in and introduced herself as Claire, the district manager. Kellan had requested her presence, but not until the end of the week. Her early arrival didn't surprise him. Word had clearly gotten out. He met her just past the drink station. "I wanted to see the store myself," she said quickly. "I heard you were here. Let's talk in the office." Inside, Claire sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap. She didn't ask questions. She waited. Kellan pulled up the employee schedule on the mounted screen. "I've reviewed 4 weeks of shift data," he said. "Your reports showed near full staffing across that time, but nearly a third of those hours weren't worked." "They were written in, not clocked." Claire didn't respond immediately. "That's a serious discrepancy," he continued. "One that suggests either falsified reporting or gross negligence." "I trusted Shelley to manage her team," Claire said. "She's been running that store for years. And during that time, several employees were denied hours based on personal bias. One staff member was targeted for needing clear verbal cues to perform basic tasks. That's not just poor leadership, that's discrimination." Claire shifted in her seat. "We don't tolerate that. You tolerated it long enough that someone sat outside by a dumpster today, waiting to see if they were allowed to work." He paused. Let the words land. "I want a full review of every store under your district. You will not be involved in that process. Starting now, you're on administrative leave until the investigation is complete." Claire's mouth twitched. "You're suspending me. I'm removing you from the chain of influence. Permanently if the review confirms what I suspect." Claire stood slowly. "You're overreacting." Kellan didn't move. "I didn't react at all for 6 months. That ends now." After she left, he stepped outside and saw Bry at the register, ringing up a man with 2 kids. She spoke clearly, asked them if they wanted their drinks with lids or without, and waited patiently for the younger child to decide. The father smiled at her, then turned and nodded at Kellan, not recognizing him, just acknowledging the effort. Later that evening, after the final order was bagged and the front door locked, Kellan gathered the team in the dining area. No clipboard. No announcements. Just him and the people who had kept this place running under conditions they never should have faced. "I'm not going to make a speech," he said. "You don't need words. You need results." He looked around the room at Maya, wiping down the counter with a quiet steadiness. At Marcus, arms at his sides, shoulders no longer drawn back in defense. At Bry, who was still surprised to be standing there at all. "Here's what's coming," he said. "Payroll will be audited. Anyone who was cut unfairly will be compensated. We're reviewing every staffing decision made by prior management. And we're rebuilding the training program to include accessibility, not just efficiency." No one interrupted. They just listened. "You've been working around a broken system. That's over. You don't have to fight to be seen anymore." "I see you." He left them with that. In the office, he fired off one final email to HR. Tomorrow, he'd be visiting Store 7, another location that had gone quiet in the reports. But tonight, he stayed an hour longer. Not to oversee, but to clean alongside the closing team. No cameras. No statements. Just a mop, a bucket, and a promise to do better. Not once did he have to remind anyone what needed doing. They already knew. They'd just been waiting for someone who cared enough to notice. Thursday began in silence. Kellan pulled into the back lot of Store 7 just after 6:30 a.m. shutting off the engine and sitting still for a moment before stepping out. The sky was still gray, the air heavy with the scent of overnight rain, and no one had arrived yet except the baker, who was inside prepping the morning pastries. He didn't bother changing his clothes this time. There was no disguise, no introduction under false pretenses. He walked in through the back entrance with a clipboard in hand and a name badge that now simply read owner. The staff would know precisely who he was. That was intentional. This store hadn't had any formal complaints. That alone had raised a flag. Stores with zero noise weren't usually doing well, they were just quiet. Too quiet. And after what he'd uncovered in Aurora, he wasn't assuming anything anymore. Inside, he found the prep kitchen already running. A short man with a shaved head and thick glasses scrubbed the slicer with focused attention. He paused only when Kellan walked past. "You need something?" "I'm just observing today," Kellan said. "Don't stop on my account." The man nodded once and went back to scrubbing, even more thoroughly now. He spent the next hour walking the floor, watching how deliveries were checked in, how prep was labeled, how the early team communicated. The pace was steady, quiet. Too quiet. By mid-morning, the general manager, a tall woman with a long braid and a buttoned-up demeanor, arrived through the front. Her name tag read, Avery GM. When she spotted Kellan, she froze for a beat, then adjusted her tone. "I wasn't told you'd be visiting today." "You weren't supposed to be," she forced a polite smile. "Well, let me know if you need anything." "I'll be in the office reviewing invoices." "You'll be on the floor, starting now," she blinked. "Excuse me? This isn't a paperwork day. I want to see how you lead in real time." She hesitated, then nodded stiffly and followed him to the front register. The next 2 hours revealed what the reports never did. Avery wasn't rude. She wasn't dismissive. She was invisible. She gave no direction, offered no support, and didn't once acknowledge the customers unless someone specifically asked for her. When 2 employees struggled to keep up with the line, she stood beside them, arms crossed, watching without stepping in. At one point, a tall boy with wire-rimmed glasses dropped an entire tray of prepped greens while rushing between stations. He crouched to clean it, clearly panicked. Avery walked past him and muttered, "Be more careful," before continuing to the back without another word. Kellan waited until the lunch rush ended before pulling Avery aside. "You've been here how long?" "4 years. GM for the last 2. "And in that time, how many times have you stepped behind the register during a lunch rush?" She tilted her head slightly. "That's not my role, I delegate. You watched 2 employees fall behind while you stood 5 feet away. They're scheduled for that station. If I step in every time someone's behind, they'll never learn to manage it. That's not accountability, that's abandonment." Her jaw flexed. "I run a clean store, we've passed every inspection." "I don't care about the checklist," Kellan said. "I care about whether your team trusts you. Right now, they don't even expect you to show up." Avery stood straighter. "I've done my job for 4 years. We've had no turnover in 6 months. That speaks for itself." Kellan didn't respond for a long moment. Then he said, "When was the last time you asked someone on your team how they were doing?" "I'm not here to coddle adults." "Then you're not here anymore." She blinked twice. "You're firing me. You're not leading. You're overseeing." "There's a difference." He stepped back onto the floor without waiting for her response. By late afternoon, the shift manager, a young woman named Nia, had taken control of the floor. Unlike Avery, she didn't bark orders. She simply moved with the team. When the register went down temporarily, she pulled out a spare tablet and began taking orders by hand. When a new hire struggled to remember a sandwich build, she walked him through it twice without rushing. Kellan approached her while she was sanitizing the front counter. "How long have you been here?" 2 years, shift lead since March. "Why hasn't your name come up in any monthly leadership reports?" She shrugged. "Avery said I wasn't ready. You're running this floor better than most GMs I've seen this year." She looked at him carefully. "Are you saying that because you want something out of me?" "I'm saying it because you've earned something you're not getting." She tilted her head. "Like what?" "A proper interview, a raise, a chance to lead." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she turned and called to the back, asking someone to refill the sanitizer bucket. Then she looked back at Kellan. "I'm not asking for anything I didn't work for. You won't have to." By the time the dinner crew clocked in, Kellan had already begun drafting a new leadership structure for Store 7. Nia would be offered interim GM status with a full review pending. The assistant manager, a cautious but competent man named Joel, would receive oversight training. Avery's departure was handled quietly but firmly. No ceremony. Just an end to a chapter that had gone on too long. That night, Kellan returned to headquarters. He didn't go to his office. He went to the operations bullpen where the regional leads sat. One by one, he called them in not for a reprimand, but for realignment. He explained in direct terms what had happened at both Aurora and Store 7. Then he asked a single question. How many other stores are we not seeing because we're only reading the numbers? No one answered right away. Then one of the senior leads, a quiet man named Carlos, said, "We've been tracking compliance, not culture." Kellan nodded. "That changes now." He issued a full directive. Every store would receive a culture audit within the next 60 days, not run by HR, not written by managers, conducted by a team of internal observers, anonymous, embedded, and trained to spot disconnects between policy and reality. He also established a new internal reporting route direct to the executive team, bypassing regional and district managers entirely. Not for complaints, for observations, for truth. The final change was personal. He committed to visiting one store per month. No notice, no agenda, just presence. He didn't want another Maya waiting for someone to notice, or another Bri wondering if her difference made her a burden, or another Nia, steady and silent, passed over because she wasn't loud about her value. 2 weeks later, back at the Aurora location, the changes had begun to root. The floors were cleaner, but more importantly, the energy was different. Employees asked questions without flinching. Bri was managing weekend inventory. Marcus had volunteered to train a new prep cook. Maya, now wearing a new name tag that read Assistant Manager, was reviewing a hiring packet with a young applicant. Kellan sat in the corner booth, sipping coffee unnoticed. He didn't need to be seen anymore. They had started seeing each other. And that was the point.